In the heart of a small town called Brookvale, amid the hustle of daily life, Joseph Tanner parked his aging sedan outside a quaint little diner named Clara's Eatery. This establishment, with its vintage decor and cheerful façade, had witnessed generations of meals and heart-to-heart conversations. The flickering neon sign that read, "Open," felt like a beacon of warmth on a chilly evening, and the aroma of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, inviting passersby to step inside. Joseph, weary from a day filled with mundane meetings and tedious debates concerning local policy, had longed for nothing more than a comforting meal. The chatter of locals and the clinking of utensils created a symphony he rarely enjoyed amidst the noise of his everyday life. It was a haven for those seeking solace in hearty portions of food, especially their renowned homemade meatloaf, a local's favorite he'd heard rave reviews about. Upon entering, the bell above the door rang cheerfully, but the atmosphere shifted as soon as he crossed the threshold. The bustling diner, once filled with laughter, quieted momentarily as heads turned toward him, the unexpected visitor. The waitress at the counter, Jessica, greeted him with a smile that faltered briefly when she recognized who he was. A well-known figure in local politics, often debated but seldom liked. The conflict within the diner was palpable. Regular patrons exchanged uncertain glances, some leaning in to whisper under their breath. A middle-aged man chewed his food more vigorously, while a woman in a denim jacket set her coffee down a bit too forcefully, her narrowed eyes reflecting the tension in the room. Joseph had been around long enough to perceive that he was not entirely welcome. But why? It was just a meal. Jessica hesitated, stepping forward with a very cautious demeanor, her voice small yet steady. Welcome. Are you dining in or taking out?" The words didn't match the unease etched across her face. Joseph chuckled softly, wanting to lighten the mood. "Dining in, if you don't mind." However, Jessica's pause lingered longer than it should have as she glanced nervously toward the kitchen before excusing herself briefly to check on something. As she disappeared through the swinging door, Joseph sensed something amiss. The whispers became more pronounced, and he could feel the uneasy glares from several tables. Maybe they were short-staffed, or perhaps someone had communicated a message he wasn't privy to. When Jessica returned, it was with a different energy. The anxiety around her had morphed into something decisive. "I'm really sorry, but we can't serve you tonight." The words were met with silence, the kind so heavy it could almost be felt. The diner was not completely still, but the familiar chatter had collapsed into an expectant hush. Forks scraping against plates, and the grill's sizzle became the only backdrop. Joseph stood, taken aback by how such a straightforward request turned into an unexpected confrontation. "Did I do something wrong?" he inquired gently, his heart hammering against his chest as he searched her expressive eyes. "It's just that, well, folks around here have their opinions about you. It's complicated," she explained, visibly torn. A nearby customer snorted lightly, the sound cutting through the charged atmosphere. The whole room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, anything, to move the moment along. Another regular, an older gentleman dressed in a faded flannel, met his gaze and shook his head slowly, his disappointment perhaps stemming from years of disillusionment. Joseph faced Jessica again and placed his hands on his hips, maintaining his composure. He understood that often in his position, choices like these transcended individual sentiment. Fear of backlash from the community could drive even a simple cafe to deny service based on an unspoken consensus. "May I speak to the manager?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing within. Jessica hesitated, glancing at the kitchen as if seeking an unspoken approval. When she disappeared once more, Joseph could almost feel the anticipation building around him. The questioning stares of onlookers made it feel as if all about him had transformed into an audience for a play. After what felt like an eternity, the kitchen door swung open once again to reveal a stout man in his 50s, arms crossed, and apron stained from a day's work. His name tag read, Ronald. He assessed Joseph, expression dark and unreadable. "I hear you have a question," Ronald announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'd like to understand why I'm being turned away," Joseph replied, matching Ronald's gaze. Ronald's brow furrowed. He wiped his hands on his apron before shifting his weight uneasily. "Look, this isn't about you personally, I swear. Folks just, well, they have their opinions, and it's easier for me to keep the peace if I don't serve you." Joseph could almost feel the waves of unrest ripple through the diners. "So, me coming in here for a meal is considered trouble?" The weight of the moment prickled the air around them, Joseph's grip on the back of the chair betraying his desire to rise above the conflict. Yet he stayed, curious how far the conversation would lead them. Ronald breathed out sharply, glancing at the customers who remained fixated on their food. "The community here, they've got their reasons. You've said some things that don't settle well with people. And they don't trust politicians around here." Joseph nodded, allowing the words to marinate. "But you don't really know me, do you?" Ronald paused, uncertain, studying him. "Not personally, no. But if you walked in here as just some guy going for meatloaf, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It feels different." A younger man in the corner booth piped up, smirking. "This really isn't even that deep, man. Just say you're not welcome." "Why don't you tell me who I am, then?" Joseph turned in the young man's direction, fixing him with a curious gaze. With a look of someone who enjoyed the air of confrontation, the young man leaned back. "You're the guy pretending to understand the common man while playing politics like everyone else." Joseph remained calm, nodding thoughtfully. "What would you have me do differently? Just play the game?" The diner grew still, and the sense of anticipation swelled. It was as if everyone was waiting for the noisiest of critics to back up his words, but he added nothing. Joseph continued, "You've made your assumptions about me without hearing anything at all. What if I told you I do understand frustration? What if I said I've lived it?" A semblance of surprise washed over Ronald's face. Meanwhile, patrons that had been silent now shifted, feeling the energy in the room transform. "Look," Joseph went on, talking steadily, "I didn't come in here as a politician. I walked in as just a guy craving a meal. Isn't that what we all want?" At the counter, an older gentleman finally spoke, breaking the silence. "It's a damn shame when a man can't eat in his own town." The statement struck like a match in a still, dark room. Ronald's brow unfurrowed. The tension shifted perceptively, as if a wall was starting to break down. "Okay," Ronald said, taking a deep breath. "Let's sit and talk it out. If we can figure this out, maybe," he glanced at the diners, "we'll see if we can find some common ground." The words brought a shift in the diner. The clinking of utensils started, slowly returning the atmosphere to its homey roots. Joseph stayed put, nodding thoughtfully. "I'll finish my conversation with you, Ronald. Let's talk." As Ronald settled on a chair across from him, the discussions that had simmered beneath the surface began to bubble over. They exchanged thoughts on community challenges, whispers of political betrayals, job losses, and promises broken through years of exploitation of the working class. I can't promise you it'll be easy, Joseph, Ronald said wearisomely, but some people here have long memories. They don't forget. I don't blame them for that, Joseph replied genuinely, his curiosity piqued. I'm not here to change minds, just to prove I'm willing to listen and understand. The diner around them transformed. The air became lighter with each exchange. They talked about life in Brookvale, about the struggles the townsfolk faced, and slowly, empathy began to sprout roots. Throughout their dialogue, Joseph revealed pieces of his own life's journey, the ground that had formed his thoughts and ideals, the realization that he too came from a background of hardship began to enlighten the patrons. He spoke candidly about his fears and aspirations, about policies and their ramifications on the everyday person. As they continued their dialogue, customers who had once remained skeptical began to soften, exchanging glances filled with a growing recognition. The young critic even leaned forward, diving into conversations about shared values rather than divisions. After a while, Ronald stood, glancing toward the kitchen. Mary, get him a menu. The waitress complied, and as the menu landed on the table, chuckles filled the air again. This isn't over yet, all right, Ronald said, the faintest hint of a grin creeping onto his otherwise serious visage. Joseph opened the menu, taking in the selection, contemplating each option. This is a start, he assured Ronald, savoring the flavors of change in the air, a possibility that had woven life into a simple diner moment. With each bite of his cheeseburger, he found a surprising bit of camaraderie forming with those around him. They had shared moments of laughter, pronouncing their collective victories over doubt, a quiet triumph in the space of a community, gradually shifting from separation to dialogue. Well, Ronald said as Joseph finished the last of his fries, this isn't quite how I pictured tonight. Neither did I, Joseph replied, an easy smile on his face. But it's also not the worst way to connect with people. Maybe he was welcomed. Maybe perceptions could be altered. Shifts in understanding could take root. And perhaps the diner would forever hold a small chapter of something greater than the tale of a politician. It was a symbol of dialogue, of listening, and of a simple fact that not every encounter needed to end in strife or resentment. As patrons eagerly returned to their chatter, with plates clattering once more to fill the room with the essence of home, Joseph leaned back and observed, a man just wanting a meal, connecting in ways he had never dreamed. In that small corner of Brookvale tonight, the walls of division had begun to crumble. They had, for a fleeting moment, discovered the best of what it meant to truly share space with one another, and amidst the unease of societal judgment, they had begun to discover the power of staying and listening, proving that it was possible for even the most divided hearts to find common ground, not through victory, but through humanity's simple need for connection. And as that night wore on, bringing with it a gathering warmth, it echoed silently through every corner of the diner. A tangible reminder that understanding might just pave the road back to trust, one conversation at a time.